Thank you, Lawrence. To introduce myself, my name is Kevan Ranz out of the West Region San Francisco office. Here with us, we have Vida Khavar from our client Family Builders by Adoption. To introduce Vida, I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer, Tara Favors.
Thank you, Kevan. Kevan didn't say, but Kevan is the person who is responsible for introducing us to Vida. So Kevan, thank you for the connection to Vida. You very humbly forgot to say that you were the reason why we met her. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out.
Thank you. Yes.
And that you're a CRM.
Yes.
Who are you, Kevan? I'm going to introduce you real quick.
I apologize, Tara. Yes, 2 years with Mutual America, client relationship manager out of San Francisco. Happy to introduce Vida from Family Builders by Adoption, who is out of the Alameda area. So that is the East Bay area here in Northern California. So happy to have Vida here with us and, be able to shed some light on our Pride Month spotlight here. So hopefully that was a better introduction.
Okay, with that, I'll let you go.
Perfect. All right, over to you, Tara.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevan, and thank you, Vida. As I've been, this year, we have really showcased our clients through our Heritage and Awareness Month series, as I've said probably every month. So much of what we do is linked to the communities to which we serve, the communities we serve, who serve their communities. And as we think about these Heritage and Awareness Months that we do, I just think it's really important to be able to show the people who are doing the work and also the people who are working for, honestly. So all the people who are on the call here, Vida, are people who are here to ensure that we're supporting you in the best way. So I think this is a wonderful twofer that we get out of this. And we hadn't in the past thought of having the people who introduced us to the clients do the introduction. But this month we said, this makes sense because it really is a partnership, the work that we do here in putting on these sessions with all of our clients, with all of our sales staff. And so we asked Kevan to do the introduction. So now, Vida, I'm going to read your bio, which I know is always awkward to hear people read about you, but I'm going to do it anyway. So the theme of our Pride Month celebration is Pride and Permanency, committing to loving families for all. And we have Vida Khavar as our guest. Vida is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has over 30 years of experience in the system of care. Vida has assisted many organizations in developing programs that provide permanency for children and family. Vida was a consultant for the federal project RISE, which aimed at improving the lives of LGBTQ plus youth in foster care in the Los Angeles County. She is currently the clinical director of Family Builders. As such, she coordinates with the California Department of Social Services in developing and implementing affirming policies and practices for LGBTQ plus children in foster care. Vida also leads the Acceptance Project and provides her clinical expertise to several jurisdictions throughout the country. Vida is multicultural and speaks several languages. Vida, what languages do you speak?
I speak French and Farsi.
Ah, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you again for being here. And we always like to start the first question by getting to know a little bit more about our speakers. I read your bio, but we are so much more than kind of the paragraph that's here. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself beyond what I read and what led you to your I'll say your role at Family Builders. What led you to the mission, and then what led you to your role, and then tell us a little bit more about the mission beyond what I said. So who are you? How did you what brought you here, and what's the kind of work that you're doing now?
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Really, really appreciate that. We love our partnership with you all. So I'm Vida Khavar, pronouncing she and her. And I started my career as a therapist in a group home in Southern California area. And when I was doing that, I really enjoyed working with teenagers, adolescents, and little by little, I grew and, became older and had different position there, supervisor, manager, ran several program, foster care and adoption, permanency program, independent living program, et cetera, and so on. And became a consultant around 2012, and was working for as a consultant for the Los Angeles Rise LGBTQ Center, and really took an incredible interest in working to find permanent home for LGBTQ youth in foster care. So when that project ended and I spoke with Jill Jacobs, who is the CEO of Family Builders, she was wondering if I knew somebody who'd be interested in a position where the role was very similar. And so I raised my hand and I went back to not being a consultant and working for, at that point, Family Builders.
Wonderful.
One of the things that I love about Family Builders is we're a very small organization, but we're very mighty. And so our mission, I would say that every single one of our staff is proud of our mission and lives it every day, which is one is to achieve permanency for children and youth, meaning that we want every child to have permanent connections in their lives, whether it's back with their biological family or a network of support or, foster family who becomes an adoptive family. And then we also advocate for systemic changes throughout California, but at this point with our LGBTQ work throughout the country as well, because we want to make sure that each children feels hope and belonging and inclusion for them and their families, so that we know that they are taken care of. So, and we try to advance as best as we can practices around equity, justice, and with a complete framework of anti-racism. So that's a lot of words, but and that's why I love working there.
They're all really wonderful words. So thank you for all of them. So Family Builders, I know, welcomes individuals and couples as prospective parents. And as I found out from our prep call, that almost half your client base are LGBTQ families.
Mm-hmm.
And all of your services are free, which is
Yes.
amazing. You can compare and contrast that with other adoption agencies, which I'm assuming are not free at all. So can you tell us a little bit about the services you provide to families, prospective parents? How do they find you, and how are you able to provide this service that you're doing for free?
So we were one of the first organizations who actually certified, so licensed LGBTQ couples. So this was like 30 plus years ago. So we were one of the first organizations who did that. And
when
I
you
think
say licensed, what does that mean? Is that like this is pre-marriage, but so what did that mean?
So license, in order to become a prospective family would come to us, usually it's by word of mouth. And so they have to go through a very thorough assessment to become a foster parents or adoptive parents. So it's a very lengthy assessment that includes a home, what we call a home study. So it's an assessment, psychosocial assessment of who the family is, who these parents are, and can they meet the needs of all children. Regardless of the child's, whatever the child may present with, whatever identities the child has, whatever issues the child may have. So we do this, we're able to do this for free because child welfare system covers the cost of these services. So we have contracts, for example, with San Francisco, the county of San Francisco or Alameda County and other counties, and that's how we can offer this for free. And we then provide, of course, case management, and we support the family after they become licensed through us.
Wonderful. I have to imagine that, well, maybe not, but has your population that you've served grown over the years? When you started 30 years ago, was it one or two families? Where are you now in terms of the number of people that you served, and how do you account for, if there was growth? I'm going to assume again there has been growth, but how do you account for the growth?
Yes, there's been growth. I'm not going to quote numbers because I'm not certain about what our numbers were back then, but there's been quite a bit of growth because we have been known of one of the organizations, and back then the only that actually welcomed lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender folks as parents. They don't have to be married. They can be single parents. And we really pay attention to the culture of our parents and the culture and the race also of our children. And so we make matches, but we prepare our parents to care for all children. And that means that if they're going to care for a child of a different ethnicity, of race, we want the parents to be prepared to embrace that child's culture and race, and really raise the child in a way that connects the child to their own ethnicity or race or culture. Even if it's not the same as the parent.
Their own, yeah. I have many years ago, I worked on a project with an organization that helped children who were coming out of foster care. And I think, when I was doing work with them, when I got exposed to them, I'm a mom. I have two children who are now in their 20s. I think it was the first time that I took a step back to realize that really the fate of a lot of kids, I don't say most, but a lot of kids who are in foster care, and what happens when they turn 18. And especially as I got closer and closer to my kids being 18, thinking, I don't know that they're ready to navigate the world by themselves. And it opened my eyes to something that I had never really thought of before, is just kind of having this total independence, and you may or may not have had all the guidance that you needed before you got there. But I think with your population, you also kind of, it brings another layer of complexity, for lack of a better word, with the population you serve. So I know I learned in your introductory call that over 30% of the youth in foster care identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or gender expansive. And we also learned that LGBTQ plus youth in foster care are 3 times more likely to commit suicide. And I'll just pause, right? Just pause on that. Three times more likely to commit suicide. So what's the work that you all do preventative wise, resources that you have to help these particular youth who are already feeling like they are isolated and alone? How do you help them to feel more supportive in a space that isn't always welcoming for them?
So really one of the work that we do, first of all, we celebrate them and honor them for who they are, right? And validate their identities, whatever identity that might be. The other thing that we do is we really, like we were talking about permanency, finding that network of support for each child, because we do not want a child to age out of foster care, what we call aging out, which is leaving foster care without connection, right? Because they will often end up, unfortunately, unhoused and with a lot of different, as you know yourself, since you were connected to our organization. And so our goal was to let's go upstream and let's stop that. So one of our program is called Permanency program, and they find families, not just foster adopt, but also some maybe families that have been lost, that do not know where their child, their grandchild or their niece or nephew, or they don't know where these children sometimes are lost in foster care. And so we do family finding, where we have tools that we can do that, where we can go and find, tell me about your family, who do you remember, and so this is kind of like detective work, but we are very successful as finding people who actually love these children and may have lost connection. So that's one. The other thing that we do, which is the program that I lead, is called the Youth Acceptance Project. And what we do is we support parents and families who are really struggling around the gender identity or sexual orientation of their children. Because for parents, it's also a coming out journey. It's not just for the child. And the parent also needs to get some support around understanding what's happening, around dealing with their own emotions. There's a lot of fear for their child, for themselves, a lot of grief of maybe not parenting the child they thought they were parenting. And of course, there's also emotions of hope eventually that develop. So our clinical intervention was developed to work directly with those family members, so that we can either prevent disruption in the first place, or if a disruption has already happened and the child is in foster care, being able to return the child to their home of origin, to their biological parents, because that's children love their families, and parents love their children. They may not know, they may not understand what's happening for their child right now, but they love their children. So
Yeah.
we can help with, help with all those emotions and whatever education they may need.
You mentioned that you're a small organization. How big is your organization? It sounds like you're small and mighty, but how big is your organization? What are the different roles that people hold there?
Yeah, so we have about 30 employees.
Mhm.
So we're very small, considering other organization in our field. So I'm the clinical director. We have several social workers that are working in the different programs. Social worker in Permanency, social worker in the foster adopt program, and social worker in the youth acceptance project. And then we also have a set of admin staff that work to help with, whether it's assessing family, licensing families, and helping us with keeping us organized, if I say. Yeah, and our operations director keeps us all together. She's also fantastic. So we're a small organization.
Yeah. So I have to imagine, and I think that stories help to resonate points. I have to imagine you have a lot of them.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a story about something or things in your work that have stayed with you? What are, I think we all have to come up with our reasons why. Particularly, I'm assuming that you have days that are emotional. I'm guessing. Can you tell us about a story that, maybe two stories, maybe one that like the one that kind of make you happy, but I also have to imagine there's the one that got away. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what that feels like.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I was like, I cannot pick one because there are so many.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in the Youth Acceptance Project, time and time again, I hear children say to us, I had no idea that I didn't think my mom would ever come around. Or I didn't think my father would ever come around and accept who I am, love me for who I am, use the pronoun that I want them to use, being okay with me changing my name. We literally had a child not that long ago who is transgender and who said that they never imagined that their grandmother would come around.
Mm.
And when we no longer served the family, the grandmother was, loving and accepting and advocating for her child, for her grandchild at school. So those are the kind of story that keeps me coming every day, even when it's really, really tough. And having children who find family when they're in foster care, and having people who are adopting them, and wanting to be their parents for the rest of their lives, and be willing to navigate some tough waters, because a lot of our children have gone through a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And so, but I have to say, and I'm going to say one more, is we do a lot of training throughout the country. And I did one this morning, and having a staff from an organization who said, I had no idea that when I misgender a child, this is what happens for this child.
So
I'm
let's
going to do
talk about
better.
that a little bit, because I do think that the idea of misgendering someone, or the idea of the pronouns, which, I am so I'm old now, right? And
Not as old as me.
we're both old. And
Okay.
and I do think that it's the world has changed, and what I don't think the client base that you support, the parents and the children, are not new. They are as old as the Bible, right? So nothing that we have today, none of us are doing anything that's different. But I do think how expressive children are, or as expressive as adults are very different. And so maybe just a little bit of a primer. When we talk about misgendering someone, what does that mean? When we talk about pronouns, what does that mean? Could you maybe just give our listeners here just a sense of like a 101?
101. Okay, let's get into it. We have an hour. No, I'm kidding. Um, um, we are understanding now research, and I'm not just talking me, but through research, we're understanding that the gender binary that we live in, men and women, girl and boy, actually excludes a lot of the diversity in gender and sex orientation that 7+ billion of us have on this planet. And so that gender and sexual orientation are better understand around spectrums. And sometimes it's not necessarily completely fixed. And sometimes people feel outside of being man or woman. And I mean, we were talking about our age. I'm going to be 56 in a few weeks. And, 40 years of my life, I was raised and lived in a world that was binary, girls and boys. And so for the last, 16 years, I have allowed my brain to kind of extend and expand and being able to understand that there are more genders than we thought. And I'm going to say also that we have to realize that, as you said earlier, we've always been around, that there are so many thriving culture throughout the world, throughout history, who have revered and had more than two genders. But through colonialism and through being, through have the white Anglo coming into and taking over, that has been erased. Think of our indigenous Native Americans who have two-spirit folks, right? That's a third gender. Hawaiians had third genders. When you go to Mexico, they have more than two genders. There's certain traditions that are associated with that. So and now because of social media, our young people are reclaiming these identities. They're like, oh, there's nothing weird with me that I don't feel like I'm a girl or a boy. It's okay. And I can use a different pronoun. But for some of us, it's a little surprising and mind-boggling because that's not how we were raised, or that's not how we experience the world. And so in our field, we try to kind of push the boundaries and have people accept and celebrate children for whoever they are.
Yeah, the children, right? Putting the children first. Yeah.
Children. Yeah. And to answer your question, so if a child chooses a certain pronoun, to not necessarily doubt this, and to be able to use the pronoun that are asking, even if it's tough. Using they, them as a singular is not an easy thing to do.
It's just not grammatically correct. That's what I tell my kids.
It feels that way. I know, but if I said to you, somebody forgot their jacket here, whose is it? I just use there as a singular.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's we have to unlearn certain things, and that is the toughest thing for us human beings to do, is to unlearn.
It is. But you are absolutely correct. And look, the statistics that we quoted around just the level of suicide and probably, again, kind of loneliness speaks to the fact that if we all care about our kids, we all have to, our kids collectively, the collective kids, we have to think about how we can be better understanding, and in every way, I think also challenge our own selves to be able to think about who we are in this world, which is I think that's really honorable, right? The idea of learning and growing is a beautiful thing. So I know it says that you work in collaboration with California's Department of Social Services to support the implementation of affirming policies and practices for LGBTQ youth. So we talk about the work that you do on the ground, but there's obviously also the work that gets done on the legislative side. So can you talk to us a little bit about any specific changes you've seen from this partnership with California State of Services, and maybe even just get a sense for how things are going kind of now?
So yes, Jill Jacob, our CEO, has been collaborating with the California Department of Social Services for decades now. And she has helped them really come around and create and develop policies that are affirming of LGBTQ kids. And in the last 10 years, I've been working with family builders. I've been around the table with them as well, with California Department of Social Services, and helped them develop policies that are protecting LGBTQ kids and honoring them and respecting them. And so we also create training to help with these implementation of these policies. I can give you an example. The last law that was passed in foster care is called Senate Bill 407, which mandates that foster parents have the ability and willingness to care for all children, regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity and expression, because so many children in foster care will go into a foster home or a group home, unfortunately, and will be rejected again and again, and be submitted to more trauma. So now all foster parents in California have to be willing to care for all children, and including LGBTQ children, because you never know who's LGBTQ. You may take a baby in your home, but within 3 or 4 years old, they can develop an identity that's different than what was assigned to them. So you may not know that, and you have to be prepared to love that child for who they are, and we'll support you, because you're going to have a lot of questions, and we'll be there to support you.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I was going to ask you a question, it just popped right out of my head. Oh, it's back in my head. How do you help your foster children to have a voice? And I guess actually I know we're talking about children, but we're obviously there. It's about parenting, fostering, and hopefully getting to adoption, the permanency. What does that position? What does teaching advocacy? What is teaching? Kind of the finding your own, having a agency. How do you work on, and actually I'll ask this, I'll say it, I'm asking you in regards to the LGBTQ family, children and adults, but actually I'm guessing that the answer that you give is probably just a general answer around having agency. But can you talk to us a little bit about how you help people to find agency, how you help people to find themselves in that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we do is we listen more than we talk to children. We listen to them. Children and families in general, they're not what their experience or trauma have been, right? They are a person in front of you, or a child in front of you, who has experienced things.
Wow. I'm going to pause on that, because that is beautiful. You are not what your experience or your trauma has been. That's right there, like, as a sentence. I'll let you finish, but I will let you finish. But I think actually just I've been really conscious as of late to be careful not to label people of their experience. And so, in big and small ways, but just one example I'll give is, homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing. There is a person who is homeless, right?
Yes.
So, and I do think, sorry, so when you say that, I do think that is a moment that is of, you are not your experiences, and you certainly should never be judged on your worst day.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
And
I'm
this
sorry.
is a great,
Keep going.
no, it's a great example. We're going away from calling youth foster youth. We're saying now children who experience foster care, or who are in foster care, right? So these words are really important for our children, for the children we work with, and for all people. We don't want to be defined by the experience, especially the bad experience we've had in our lives. And it's just kind of what we call trauma-informed care, is really we're here to listen, we're here to let's process, let's talk about what has happened to you, so that the child or even the family can develop their own sense of agency, that they're not, like I said, their experience. But we also listen to what they need and tell us what they need. I may think you need something, and you may be like, I don't think so. You can't tell me what I need, because you're not me. And so I think it's, we have we do a lot of surveys, we do a lot of listening sessions. We also do a lot of work with people who have lived experience. We pride ourselves hiring people with lived experience, so that they can also let us know some of the things we are not doing well, and also the things we're doing well. So former adults who have experienced foster care in the past, or any other identity that they embody. So
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I'm going to offer up to the audience, if anyone has any questions please feel free to chime them in. If we get some questions, we'll let me just see. Do we have any? Not yet. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to chime them in. If not, let's keep on going. Let's talk about what's influenced your approach to community service and advocacy. So let's go back and talk about Vida for again. What are the lessons that you've learned along the way, along your career, that have shaped kind of who you are, your mantra, you as a leader? Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, I wasn't ready for that.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You know, like I said, 30 years working in child welfare really teaches you a lot about people, and not just children, but people in general. When I started, I thought my goal was to work with children. I very quickly realized that in order to work with children, I'd have to work with the adults around the children.
Yeah, sometimes that's unfortunate, isn't it?
Well, that's how I felt before, yes. And sometimes, going back and working with the children is the easy part. It really is the easy part. It's the adults that make it a little harder. So, and I come from I'm Middle Eastern myself. I'm of Iranian descent. I was born in Switzerland. I came here, later on in my life. So I'm a gay woman, so I have some identities as well that I've had to learn about myself, and I'm also a woman, so a lot, there's some things we have to do that are harder than for other folks, and so
dance backwards with high heels on, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Tish, I'm going to have you join in and see, and then I have a few extra questions reserved, so I promise I won't scare you too much, but just thinking
no,
any
that's
questions
fine.
from the
No
audience.
No worries.
Tish, do you want to join on?
Surely. Thank you. Wonderful, as always, to hear both of you speaking in our session today. Lots of lessons. I took copious notes. I think I always do. But just thinking about, as Tara mentioned, the language that we use in terms of framing and phrasing, saying that someone is a foster child or foster youth. I don't know that I had that mindfulness before to use the different framing that I've been conscious of in saying that someone is unhoused versus homeless. So that's just one of the many takeaways that I'll have today. I do see some questions coming in. This might be a comment. I have a question of my own if we don't have others coming in, but this is a great webinar. Vida's love and concern resonates. It's hugely important that we don't meet others on their trauma. So like-minded in terms of the comment that was made just there. I just had, and I hope I'm not taking away from anything you wanted to ask, Tara, but I do wonder in terms of the levels of support and the way I can think and how we all on this call and going forward can just start to be more conscious and supportive. Part of our theme, I don't believe we've shared that with you, but it was on the image at the beginning, is alliance and advocacy and allyship. And in saying that and wanting to better ourselves and better our world, I just wondered if there's anything you can share in terms of how we can move forward in being better allies and, supportive of the community. What can you share personally, or things that you can share that Family Builders does to, help in that regard in our learning and our understanding?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of layers to the question. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of hurt in the community. It's very scary, especially for transgender and non-binary individuals and children. They are very, very scared of what may come down the pike in California. We work nationally, as I mentioned, and we have already seen that in other states. The number of suicide have spiked in our children. The number of hospitalization have spiked, even in California. We work with children who are saying, what if I'm not allowed to be who I am in a year from now? What happens if, what happens when? And so I think it's really, really important to check in with the people who are part of the community, your friends, your family, people that check in with them. How are you doing? I know things are tough right now. There are things that are being said that are not okay, how can I be supportive of you? Just ask, folks. Everybody will have a different way of answering that question, I think, but ask your families and your friends and people that you know who identify in the community. And if you can, bring some hope and advocate for LGBTQ folks, wherever you are and whatever you do. If you can just advocate and say, these are children. We're talking about children, regardless of identity. They're children, they're human beings. And we cannot erase transgender children or folks from this planet. They've always been here. They always will be. And we have to honor and celebrate them. So celebrate them for who they are.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't see many questions coming in, but yet another note that you made, the checking in, mindful of, we're just, having finished our Mental Health Awareness Month celebration. And one of the things that in a session that we held with our employees, we talked about was checking in. So, ever important, the phrase checking in on your strong friends, but just, touching base and having an understanding that people are sometimes, going through things and covering for emotions that they're not ready to share until they feel that they can be vulnerable. So I appreciate that. Tara, I'll turn it back over to you. I imagine if any other questions come on, that you can handle that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you both again. Take care.
Thank you, Tish. I do think one of the things that came out of maybe COVID, where people started working from home and you saw people with their families in the background, their pictures in the background, is just a little bit more mindfulness and appreciation of people's circumstances. And I take a lot from what you said around doing a check-in. And again, the conversation that we're having, where your organization primarily focuses on adoption and family realignment for LGBTQ youth, but it really is, the advice that we're giving is really anyone's advice around checking in, being an advocate, being an ally, kind of seeing people for who they are and not what they've been through. I do appreciate that. And I think part of what I love about this organization and the clients that we support is it gives us a chance to be able to really think about the good work that's being done in the community, that we need, right? That we all really need. I'm wondering, we're all here for the most part, finance professionals here, but I have to imagine that there are some days that, again, are probably harder or not. There's probably some days where you probably need to do some check-ins yourself. If you could give one piece of advice to new professionals who are going into the field, what would it be?
Which field?
Your field.
My field, okay. So hang in there. If you make a difference for one person, that be a child or an adult, done your job.
Yeah. Well, I don't have more questions, or I could talk to you forever. So I'm wondering, do you have any parting words? I do think, as you said, these are some, depending where you are, there's some tenuous times, right? Someone said your strength is incredible. That's a comment that we got. And I do love that we hear from our clients, not just because you're clients. I just think so many of you do such interesting work. If there's any kind of parting words that you might be able to give to the organization, things that we should keep in mind as we go through the rest of the Pride Month celebrations, the next 20 days that we have, or 19 days that we have left, and more so around thinking around those adults and children who are marginalized. I'll leave it to you to kind of give us the last, maybe some sage advice, which I didn't prep you for, but I feel like you might be able to say something from your heart.
I don't know about sage, but I'll say it from my heart. I'll say one thing. LGBTQ youth don't stop being LGBTQ youth after June, right? They will always be LGBTQ youth. So don't stop celebrating them or thinking about them after June has passed. Continue thinking about them. And if you are able to, don't be silent. Advocate. Little things, even if you hear something that being said that you think is biased or is not okay, if you are able to say something and say, I don't think this is the way to say this, or so having the courage to stand up or correct or change the narrative around certain things, I think is very important. And to not forget that our LGBTQ youth continue to be LGBTQ after June 30th.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add on to what you said, is not being afraid to ask questions. As I said, you
Yes.
said you're turning 56. I just turned 51, so we're both old. But we're looking good at it.
It's a construct.
And we have a long way to go. But I do think that it is okay to recognize that the things change, and what people's expectations change are, the way people want to be referred to change. And if you don't know, not knowing is not a good enough excuse, right? If you care, then you'll ask and you'll seek more information. And I have to imagine that if, to the extent that you have a child, or, or you have a friend, I have to imagine that any question asked with love, with empathy, with interest, will be well received. That's my assumption. Right.
Always. And if you're not quite sure how somebody, like you said, ask the question, what does it mean to you? Thank you for sharing that you are non-binary. What does it mean to you to be non-binary? Let me know, because I'm not quite sure what that means for you. That's an easy, and don't be shy about asking the question. I love what you just said. I wish I had thought of it too. Ask the question. Ask the question.
Yeah.
It's awkward. It's awkward, and it's uncomfortable, and we're afraid of hurting other people. We're afraid of saying something wrong. Don't be afraid. Free yourself of that. Nobody expects you to know all the terms. Nobody can know them all.
No. And the last comment that we have here is that we need to engage each other with love and lead with love. And so I'll let John Clare, who wrote that comment, be the last word. Vida, thank you so much for giving your time. I thank you for being a client of ours. As I guess I'll close as I open, that we are here because of each of our clients. If you weren't with us, then we wouldn't be here. And so I thank you that you take the time to spend with us out of your day. I wish you beautiful pink flowers and purple roses for Pride Month and every month otherwise. And thank you to you and the 30 of your professionals and others that you work with for the work that you do here.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you for having me. This was very meaningful. So I really appreciate you. And we love having you all, giving us your financial advice and everything else. So we feel very taken care of by you all.
Good. Well, I see some claps and some hearts as we close out. So we'll leave on a good note. We'll leave on the claps and hearts. Thank you, Vida.
Thank you, Tara.
Have a wonderful rest of the month and year.
You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.